Okay, so you guys have really piqued our curiosity this time. You've sent in some sources that hint at something really ancient. We're looking at material about the Emerald tablet.
Ah, yes.
And right away, I think we can safely say that this is pointing us towards the Emerald tablet. Sometimes it's also called the Smaragdine tablet.
Right, exactly. Just a slight variation in the spelling there.
Yeah. But we're definitely talking about the same incredibly fascinating thing. What's really striking is that the Emerald tablet is this really concise piece of writing, but its impact has just reverberated for centuries.
Absolutely.
Really a cornerstone of alchemical exploration, but its reach goes so much further. You find its influence in philosophy, mysticism, and even, believe it or not, it had a role in the early development of modern chemistry.
I think what's so amazing is how this one text continues to spark all these questions and different interpretations.
Absolutely. And the two sources that you sent in, they both highlight that essential nature of the Emerald Tablet, even though they approach it in slightly different ways. So today, we're going on a deep dive with you. We're going to unlock this ancient knowledge together. We're going to dig into its mysterious origins, unravel those core ideas it presents, and see how it was used and understood throughout history.
Okay.
And maybe, just maybe, we can uncover some enduring value it might hold for us even today.
Sounds good.
All right, let's jump right in. And there's no better place to start than with the legendary origins of this enigmatic tablet.
Well, the figure most closely associated with the Emerald Tablet is this figure, Hermes Trismegistus.
Okay.
Now, he's such a captivating figure because he's often seen as this merging of the Greek god Hermes. Hermes, messenger of the gods, god of wisdom, magic, and the Egyptian god Thoth,
Uh-huh.
who is associated with writing, knowledge, and divine law.
Okay.
So from the outset, you've got this really potent blend of intellectual and spiritual forces that are kind of imbued in this text.
This is like the perfect origin story for something that has had such a huge and lasting impact. But what about the actual physical tablet itself? Because our sources mention that its beginnings are somewhat obscure. What can we actually piece together about its history?
Yeah, pinning down the precise physical history of the tablet is tricky, but the general consensus among scholars is that it likely originated in Arabic
Okay.
around the 8th or 9th century. And then from there, it makes its way into Europe, it's translated into Latin, and it really gains traction during the medieval period.
Hmm.
It's worth noting, and one of your sources pointed this out, is that the ideas contained within the tablet seem to draw from even earlier Hellenistic and Egyptian philosophical traditions.
Hmm.
For instance, the concept of universal correspondence, which was circulating in Hellenistic thought, probably contributed to the foundation of the ideas that we see in the tablet.
Got it.
So it's not emerging in a vacuum.
So we might not have this definitive story of it being, inscribed on emerald or emerald in ancient times.
Yeah.
But we have a pretty good understanding of its emergence in the early medieval period,
Yeah.
building on those older intellectual currents. So let's dive into the core of it, the content itself.
Okay.
Now, both of our sources describe the writing as being really short and packed with hidden meaning. So what are some of the central principles that we find expressed in these statements?
So you're right. It's not this long, drawn-out explanation. It's a series of very concise, symbolic statements.
Okay.
And I think at the heart of it, it's this powerful idea of transformation,
Okay.
not just on the physical level, which we often associate with alchemy, but also on a deeper spiritual level.
Okay.
And of course, we have to talk about that most famous line for the tablet, as above, so below.
As above, so below. It's definitely a phrase that sticks with you.
Yeah.
But for someone who might be encountering that for the first time,
Right?
what's the key insight that it offers within the context of the Emerald Tablet?
The idea is that the grand design of the cosmos, the universe, is mirrored in the intricate workings of each individual being. Understanding one helps us understand the other. That's that mind-blowing concept at the core of it.
Yeah.
This fundamental interconnectedness between the vast universe, the macrocosm,
Oh,
and the individual, the microcosm.
got it.
The same patterns and forces are at play on all these different levels.
So it's like we're these tiny reflections of the universe, and the universe is kind of reflected within us.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And our sources also highlight the use of symbols and metaphors.
Right.
What kind of knowledge was being conveyed through this symbolic language?
Well, the symbols and metaphors are crucial because they point to these profound truths that are really hard to express in just plain language. They point to the idea that all things are fundamentally unified.
Okay.
So even though things might look different on the surface,
Right.
everything's connected at a deeper level.
Got it.
They talk about the process of creation, how the universe and everything in it came to be.
Yeah.
And, importantly for alchemy, they deal with the idea of purification through transformation,
Okay.
taking something in its raw form and refining it into something more perfect.
So the alchemists weren't just trying to magically turn, cheap metals into gold. There was a deeper meaning behind it all.
Right. The physical transmutation was often an allegory for inner transformation,
Okay.
refining the spirit,
Got it.
the journey towards enlightenment.
So that brings us nicely to how the Emerald Tablet was actually used.
Yes.
And our sources point out a few key ways in which it was applied.
Yeah.
They call it an alchemical guide, a philosophical text, and even a spiritual framework.
Right.
So let's unpack those. First of all, as an alchemical guide, how did alchemists actually put those concise principles into practice?
Well, think of it this way. The Emerald Tablet acted as the blueprint for alchemists.
Okay.
It laid out the fundamental principles that informed their work.
Okay.
It outlined the ultimate objectives, like achieving the Philosopher's Stone, which was seen both as this substance that could transmute base metals into gold,
Yeah.
but also, more significantly, as a representation of ultimate spiritual enlightenment. So it wasn't a literal step-by-step recipe book. It was more like this foundational statement of their core philosophy and their aspirations.
And what about its role as a philosophical text? How did thinkers actually engage with those ideas?
Well, philosophically, the Emerald Tablet offers this framework for understanding the very nature of reality.
Okay.
That as above, so below principle, for example, encourages us to see the universe and our place in it as a whole.
Okay.
It suggests that if we can understand the larger cosmic order, we gain these profound insights into ourselves and into the very essence of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lens through which we can interpret the world around us.
Right, really emphasizing that back and forth relationship between the big picture and the individual.
Yeah.
And lastly, there's its use as a spiritual framework. How did that play out?
As a spiritual framework, the Emerald Tablet really spoke to people who were on a quest for personal and spiritual growth.
Uh-huh.
It stresses the importance of turning inward, finding knowledge within, as this key to unlocking these greater truths that are mirrored in the universe. It's an invitation to embark on a journey of self-discovery and enlightenment.
So this relatively short text carried a lot of weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our sources certainly point out its profound influence. This wasn't just some dusty old document that nobody ever looked at.
Oh, no, not at all.
What kind of impact did it have?
The Emerald Tablet has had this really profound influence on alchemical thought over the centuries. Alchemists would turn to it again and again for inspiration and guidance, but its influence extends far beyond the realm of alchemy.
Because, as our sources mention, there are some really big names associated with it, like Isaac Newton and Carl Jung.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty diverse range of thinkers.
It is. So Isaac Newton, as I'm sure many people know, was really into alchemy alongside his groundbreaking work in physics and mathematics.
Yeah.
And the ideas in the Emerald Tablet really resonated with him. This idea of universal laws and these hidden correspondences within nature.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, who saw in alchemical symbolism, and that includes the Emerald Tablet, this really rich source of insight into the human psyche
Okay.
and the process of individuation,
Okay.
which is that journey towards wholeness.
Yeah.
So you can see how its impact just ripples out into these really different intellectual spheres.
That's incredible. From, the very practical pursuit of transforming matter to understanding the deepest workings of the mind.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that our sources also note its continuing inspiration for modern spiritual and esoteric movements.
Absolutely.
So this isn't just some relic of the past.
No, those core concepts of interconnectedness, the search for inner wisdom, and the possibility of transformation, they still resonate with lots of people today.
Mm-hmm.
People who are exploring their own spiritual paths or looking for a deeper understanding of themselves and the universe.
Which brings us to the idea of interpretation. Because given its enigmatic nature and the fact that it's been around for so long, it's not really surprising that there are all sorts of different ways of understanding the Emerald Tablet.
You're absolutely right. The interpretations are incredibly diverse.
Okay.
Some people see it mainly as this guide for practical alchemy, with symbolic clues to physical transmutation. Others view it as this profound, mystical text about the nature of reality and the pathway to spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And then there are people who blend those viewpoints. seeing the physical and spiritual as these intertwined parts of the same transformational journey.
It's almost like a text that demands you to really engage with it and to do some personal reflection. So I want to turn to you, our listener, who is always eager to learn and to have those aha moments.
Yes.
How can humanity benefit from the wisdom in the Emerald Tablet?
It's a great question. So first, the teachings in the tablet encourage self-discovery and self-awareness.
Okay.
And by prompting us to look within and explore our inner landscape,
Yeah.
it can lead to a much deeper understanding of ourselves, and that can unlock our hidden potential
Uh-huh.
and even allow us to contribute positively to the world around us.
It really echoes that ancient wisdom of know thyself, which we see in so many different traditions.
It does.
Yeah. Let's go.
And then you've got that central idea, as above, so below,
Right.
which promotes this holistic perspective on life.
Right.
And by recognizing that everything's interconnected,
Yeah.
it can foster empathy
Okay.
and a sense of responsibility, not just towards other people, but also toward the environment.
Right. And all the systems that we're a part of,
These-
which feels especially relevant today as we become increasingly aware of our interconnectedness with the planet. Okay. What else?
The Emerald Tablet also emphasizes how important knowledge and wisdom are in personal growth.
Okay.
By valuing learning and the pursuit of understanding,
Yeah.
not only can we grow individually,
Uh-huh.
but we can also contribute to progress in various fields, whether it's science, philosophy, or spirituality.
It's that timeless call to stay curious
Yeah.
and keep seeking knowledge.
Exactly.
All right.
And finally, I think the alchemical process itself,
Right.
as this metaphor for personal transformation, offers a valuable message.
Okay.
It shows us that it's important to embrace change, to work through difficulties, and to strive for continuous self-improvement
Right.
in order to live a more fulfilling life. And it helps us reframe those difficulties as opportunities for growth and refining ourselves.
Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. How can our listeners start to access this knowledge, though?
Right.
Because it is an ancient text, and it can feel a bit obscure.
Yeah. What are some practical starting points?
One suggestion is to explore different translations of the Emerald Tablet.
Mhm.
Because different translators might emphasize different nuances in the text, you can gain a richer understanding. It's also helpful to engage with other alchemical writings and philosophical traditions
Uh-huh.
to provide that context, to deepen your understanding of the concepts.
So it's not just about looking at the Emerald Tablet in isolation.
Right.
It's about putting it in this broader intellectual context.
Yeah, exactly.
What else?
And beyond just reading, meditation and reflection on those core principles
Right.
can be really helpful for absorbing the teachings
Wow.
and applying them to your own life. Think about as above, so below, and how that might relate to a specific challenge you're facing right now or something you're working towards.
Okay, so a really tangible way of engaging with it. Now, what about connecting with other people who are also exploring these ideas? Yeah, that's great. Joining study groups or discussions focused on Hermeticism, alchemy, or related esoteric traditions can be a fantastic way to learn from others and to hear different perspectives. You might discover aspects you hadn't even considered before.
Collective wisdom at its finest.
Absolutely.
So, to wrap up, how do we translate these ancient principles into our modern daily lives?
It comes down to practical application.
Hmm.
Strive for balance in your own life, actively seek knowledge and understanding, and engage in your own personal transformation. Those are all ways to embody the spirit of the Emerald Tablet in the 21st century.
Excellent advice. So let's summarize what we've explored today. We started with those mysterious origins of the Emerald Tablet. It's linked to this legendary figure, Hermes Trismegistus.
Right.
It likely emerged sometime in the early medieval period, drawing on earlier traditions. We talked about its central principle of interconnectedness, as above, so below.
Yes.
We talked about its use of symbolism to convey these profound teachings about unity and transformation. And we looked at how it has influenced not just alchemy, but also philosophy,
Yeah.
and how it appears even in the works of people like Newton and Jung, which highlights its relevance even today. And finally, we considered how it can be a guide for us personally and for society as a whole,
Yeah.
encouraging us to be self-aware, to understand the world holistically, and to always keep pursuing knowledge.
It's amazing how this short, ancient text has such deep wisdom that continues to resonate today.
It really is.
It encourages us to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
to see the connections between our inner world and the outer world, and to really embrace this continuous journey of learning and self-improvement.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for you, our always curious listener, here's something to think about. Consider a challenge you're facing or something you're really striving for in your life right now. How could this idea of as above, so below give you a fresh perspective? What parallels can you find between the larger context of what's going on and the finer details of your own thoughts and actions? This is your chance to do your own deep dive inspired by the Emerald Tablet. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.